Joining us now is Ann Compton, ABC News White House correspondent. She is on the road with the president, who is in The Hague, Netherlands, for a meeting of the G7, the group of seven today. Ann, thank you for joining us. I would imagine, as you might expect in a situation where the Russians have invaded the Crimean Peninsula and are perhaps poised to do greater damage in that particular region. This will be the topic of great interest today as the group of seven gathers. How is this all going to take place?
As you know, this is almost coincidence that the Russians have taken over Crimea, have driven the Ukraine forces out of their bases there at the very moment that 58 countries are coming together here in the Netherlands for what's a nuclear summit. So on the sidelines of this, Vladimir Putin said he would not come to this. On the sidelines, the president is meeting with the G7. They've kind of, I think the G8 won't be around for a while. This is after the G7, and they differ a little on the economic sanctions they want, but they all say that there has to be a cost on Russia for what it's done so far.
All right. So how much agreement is there about something that would really have an impact, or are there people still reluctant to do anything?
Well, they've all done something, and the economic sanctions. Remember, we're dealing here with four major countries in Western Europe. We're dealing with the U.S., Canada, and Japan, and everybody has signed up here in Europe for some amount of sanctions. It's hard to see, Brian, by the end of the day whether they're.
Uh-oh, Ann, you there?
I believe we have lost Ann.
Oh, there she is.
Come back to us, Ann. We got you.
I'm right here. It's hard to see by the end of today, guys, exactly what this group would do to sting Russia any more than they have. But they are going to talk tough, I think.
Ann Compton, ABC News White House correspondent, is joining us live from The Hague in Netherlands as the G7 summit begins. And Ann, yesterday on CNN State of the Union, Deputy National Security Advisor Tony Blinken outright said it's possible the Russians are preparing to move into Ukraine with the massive thousands of troops along the border there. It's a startling thing and a very straightforward thing for somebody at that high level to say. Is the administration backing off of that?
No, I don't think so. Remember, for the last several days, they have said, look what is going on just across the Russian border. Along the eastern side of Ukraine, Chuck Hagel, the defense secretary, got on the phone with relatively blunt words, we were told, with the defense minister of Russia, saying, what in the world are you doing there? It was supposed to be an exercise of about 11,000 troops. It's well up over 20,000. And while Vladimir Putin once said that he had no interest in annexing Crimea, we saw how long that lasted. So they don't trust Putin not to move further into Ukraine.
Well, and that's sort of the question when you see the person in charge of NATO troops saying, look, it looks like they've got other things in mind. They're massing troops at the border. Some question about whether they might go into a part of Moldova. The question becomes, what would the G7 do if indeed this is not the end of Russian expansionism?
Well, remember, you've got three different meetings for the president here, three different groups, all with different mandates. The G7 is the economic team. They had taken Russia in and made it the G8. I think we'll be back to the G7 for a while. And they can talk politics and sanctions. NATO is the defense arm, and NATO is the one that is pledged to, if you overrun the border of one of our friends, it's like attacking us. Ukraine is not in NATO. Ukraine is not protected by that, but certainly Poland and the Baltics are, and that's why Vice President Biden went there. Finally, you've got the EU. That is the group that the president will be meeting with on Wednesday when we get to Brussels. The European Union, again, wants to impose some sanctions, but they also don't want to be hurt because their economic ties to Russia are so strong. So three different groups, three levels of reaction. Today, I think, though, is the significant political voice, the G7.
And Compton, I know that what was on the president's agenda before all of this happened over in Ukraine was the nuclear security summit and his concern over loose nukes. It's been something that's been at the forefront of his agenda from the beginning of his presidency, and the idea that there could be nuclear weapons floating around there and falling into the hands of terrorists. Is there going to be any progress on that issue today?
Well, yeah, they've just moments ago announced that Japan has agreed to turn over to the United States some highly enriched uranium that has not everything that Japan has, but part of what of the stockpiles they've got to get those neutralized and out of any possible tampering by terrorists. When President Obama was first elected, one of the things he said, what keeps him up at night? Loose nukes. And he started this nuclear Security Summit in 2010. Then South Korea did it in 2012. Now the Netherlands is the host this time. No, they're not going to make tremendous progress. There's no enforcement here. This is a voluntary tying up and getting rid of nuclear materials. But the president says it is still a very real danger. The idea of even a small amount of nuclear material in the hands of somebody who has no compunction about using it against innocent civilians.
All right. As we wrap up here, this is not the only thing on the president's trip. It's a 6-day trip to Europe. He's going to the Vatican. He's also going to Saudi Arabia. Talk about the rest of the trip.
Okay, on Thursday, he arrives for a meeting, a one-on-one, an audience with Pope Francis. Of course, the president wants to talk about poverty and income, and he believes he and the Pope have share a lot of view on that. That afternoon, the president will actually get a first-hand tour of the Colosseum in Rome as well. The final day, the president flies in for 1 2-hour meeting and dinner with the King of Saudi Arabia at a time when the Saudis are stressed about thinking the U.S. is not going to be strong enough on Iran. They're worried about Syria, the Middle East peace process, and working. So I think there are a lot of rough edges to smooth over with the King of Saudi Arabia. All
right. Ann Compton, ABC News, White House correspondent, who's traveling with the president today in the Netherlands. Thank you, Ann.
Yes, enjoy all that good food there in the Netherlands.
Thank you. The chocolate's in Belgium.
There you go. Thank you.
Thanks.